laughing with friends, having a good time. Then all of a sudden, that voice pops up into your head and says, beware, it's not going to last. The attic, plainly, is joy / your hobbies. If you grew up in divorce or chaos, you might feel guilty when life is going well. You're laughing with friends, having a good time. Then all of a sudden, that voice pops up into your head and says, beware, it's not going to last. It's all going to come crumbling down right before your eyes, and there is nothing you can do about it. Today, we're going to talk about why joy feels unsafe when your first home collapsed, and how to rebuild what I call the attic of your life. If you're in a dark place where joy feels impossible, not just unsafe, screenshot the crisis info in the description below. You do not have to carry that alone. So a quick recap of the house. As you guys know, we've been going through the BHI framework for several weeks now. And how it works is this. Your foundation is love and truth. Basement is identity and integrity. The first floor of your house is your health, physical and financial. The second floor of your house is your calling, your vocations in life. But now we come to the attic. The attic, plainly, is joy / your hobbies. And the way we define hobbies at BHI is the things that you love doing with the people that you love doing them with. Very simple, but here's the thing. That's exactly what joy is. A simple thing. The problem with someone like me or someone like you is that people who grew up in chaos, divorce, or traumatic situations, joy became a luxury because we were too busy being adults decades before it was our time. You probably never got a good, safe attic. You learn that joy is a distraction or a setup. 'Cause here's the thing. Joy was always interrupted. Happy moments followed by fights, slamming doors, being physically abused, being sexually abused, being emotionally abused, sudden changes, like you're moving or we're leaving, and your nervous system learned that when you relax, bad things happen. But here's the thing. It's not true. Because survival isn't living. And you've been tuned to survive for a very long time. And you cannot be on survival mode and live a happy life. It's just not possible. Those traits, those instincts, those thoughts, feelings, impressions, ideas that you had to allow to develop to keep you from death as a child are now the things that are going to maintain your death as an adult. But the good news is trauma can be healed because of the nature of what trauma is. We've previously defined it, and as you know, it is not the event in itself that happened to you. It's the wound that you sustained as a result. And because it's a wound, it can be healed. You're allowed to be joyous. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to do things that you love and do those things with the people you love doing them with. And here's the thing. Not only do you have permission, you have an obligation, because joy isn't optional. Joy is proof that your soul is healthy. We're going to get into all of that today. So, very happy that you guys are here. I'm so grateful that we've been going through this, having the opportunity to talk about this. You guys have been absolutely blowing up the comments, and it's been amazing. I truly, truly love you guys, and I'm so happy that we're able to connect on these crucial aspects of life. The attic is the quietest place of the home. It's also the most misunderstood. People think joy is a luxury. They think hobbies are distractions, and they think play is childish. But here's the thing. That's not what psychology nor neuroscience says about the necessity of play and the brain. It's actually super healthy for you. But just like everything else, moderation is key. So here's why we introduce joy as a structural necessity, not an option. Let's break that down. So it's very simple. Because the attic is your capacity to enjoy the life you're building. Without it, it doesn't show that you're more mature or more along or less along than anybody else. But neuroscience says the opposite of play is not work, it's depression. So here's the thing. I want you to understand that joy is probably your greatest medicine. And it's not so that you can just play all the time, but it's to intentionally include joy and your hobbies into your life. Because when you do it with purpose, with intention, it doesn't control you, but it's part of that whole life that you're building. It makes it even better to look forward to know that you focused hard on your vocations, on your health, on your identity, your integrity, having love and truth in your life. Joy is the reward for everything else. And even if you're still struggling with all of those things, the science still says that joy is a requirement in your life. As you guys know, for many years of my life, I've expressed that I introjected a lot, which we've explained the two pathways that your brain decides to take when you experience trauma as a child. You either externalize or you introject. And so because I was a person who leaned towards introjection more, mostly because of the abuse of my biological father, he made it very clear to me at that time that it was all my fault. And that's part of him being a narcissist sociopath. But regardless, it took me a long time to realize that the very fact that I breathe is not burdensome. And part of living this new life post-suicide attempt is understanding that joy is actually okay. That not only is joy okay, and I have permission to be joyous, but I actually need it. And that in itself has been one of the most liberating things that I've ever come to discover. And of course, it's a work in progress. You know, some of my old demons are slain completely. Some of them have wounds, heavy wounds that they've sustained, and they're starting to bleed out. But some are still alive, and they still pester, they still sting, they still stab, they still bruise. But every single day, we're a percentile better than the day before. And it's the most amazing thing. And I love that I've become a joyous person. And it's something that my family has been able to recognize, um, especially my mother. You know, for a very long time, I didn't speak. I was very serious. And if you ask her as much, she'll say so. But now I have the capacity to laugh, and not the fake laugh that I did, the performative laugh that I carried on for years so people wouldn't ask me how I was doing. So they would focus on how funny I was instead of how wounded I was. I'm not talking about that laugh. I'm talking about real, genuine, like belly laugh from the soul, man. And it's been the most amazing thing. And I want you guys to know that even if you're nowhere close to being able to say that, if there is a chasm between my joy and yours in this moment, I want you to know that not only can that chasm be filled, or a bridge could be built, or you have the capacity to super jump from one side to the other, it is possible. It is 100% possible. Because I've been to the point where many people have been, and most don't come back from. And so, understanding that since I took my life post suicide, that joy was possible is definitely something that I want the world to know. And I want you guys to know that I am charging you with the obligation of allowing joy and hobbies into your life. And as always, I've been so appreciative of everything that you guys have been engaging. The comments have been beautiful and awesome. And I'm just so happy that we could connect on these things. And that's all I want, is I want my story to inspire you to be the best version of yourself, because you deserve it. And if no one in your life right now knows that, I do. And I want you to know I love you guys. And so, I have my notes here. Let's get into the breakdown of why joy is a requirement, not an option. So, first thing we have to do, obviously, is give the definition of joy. And of course, the BHI definition, much like everything else we do, we think is very unique, but also powerful and widely acceptable, because for the most part, if you've come from trauma, divorce, or, chaos in your childhood, you have an understanding of these things just like I do. And so for us, joy is the emotional evidence of internal wholeness. Now, does that mean that you have to wait to feel joyous or to be joyous until you're whole? No, but it's a part of the process. It is that signal that your soul is moving in the right direction. So it's your nervous system's way of saying we're safe enough to feel good. But joy is not a feeling, it's a signal. A signal that shame has lost its power, that anxiety has calmed, that purpose isn't crushing you, that the soul can breathe, and that you are not living in survival mode anymore. So joy is your receipt that you get of healing. And that is what I want you guys to understand. That the more healing you do, the more you go into what all of the world breaks everything what we're saying down basically into the field of what's called personal development, you will start to be joyous. And it will be weird at first. It'll feel foreign. And your natural inclination will be to reject it, to push it down, to get it away from you. But after a while, it'll keep knocking. And you'll just be waking up one day like, wow, yes, we did it. The mountain was just a path, not the journey, not the destination. It was something we had to get over, or go under, or transverse. And I really hope that feeling for you guys. I really do. I really do. But, as you know, we like to go into the psychology and the neuroscience and the spirituality of why these things are important. So, the psychology of the addict. Very important. So here's the neuroscience that most people miss. Survival suppresses pleasure. When a child grows up in chaos, the brain learns several things. Number one, don't relax. That next thing is right around the corner. Don't enjoy. Because if you enjoy it for too long, it's going to get taken away from you. Don't shine too bright. Because you're either surrounded by darkness, your abusers, and if you shine too bright, you know that an abusive person or a predator will try to absolutely shut that light down. Or you don't want them to feel even worse about themselves, which is insane, but it happens, right? And then lastly, fun is unsafe. Because anything that lasts that's good for too long means the shoe's about to drop. But it's not. At least not as an adult. Didn't have control back then. But you have control now. And if you're still in a situation where you are not in control, then that's another conversation. And we definitely will be addressing all of those things as well at one point. But the other shoe doesn't have to drop. Everything can be okay. Especially if you're working on all of the other areas of the framework that we've covered up until this point. So what happens though is as an adult, it creates within you a certain preset of ideas, of conceptions, of things that are a driving force for how you make decisions. So you feel guilty when you rest. Because if you're resting, then you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, then you have no purpose. And if you have no purpose, then why live at all? Right? Or you have discomfort in fun. Again, because you believe that that thing, that force, is going to come and snuff it out. Right? Shame for having hobbies. You probably don't talk about your hobbies too much because you realize that if you were to mention something that you loved to the abuser in your past, they would have completely eviscerated you for it. And so the very idea of you telling someone else that you actually like something and doing it makes you joyous and gives you that feeling of happiness and contentment and fulfillment, then it would be too good to be true. Right? Or you get an addiction to productivity. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be disciplined, concentrated, and absolutely ruthless in your productivity. Because productivity is a sign of maturation, but it's also a sign of a person who is living for the good. They're in an upward direction. But becoming a workaholic is one of the greatest addictions that no one wants to talk about. And obviously, I have big aspirations, I have high aspirations. I understand that there will be seasons of my life where I will not be able to engage in my hobbies as much as I would want, if at all. But that does not mean that I cut them out of my life completely prematurely. Okay? We must always leave space for joy, even in the midst of productivity. And if you're in your vocation, your calling, the very thing that you're working on won't be work. It will be actually something that you love, something that you feel inspired to do every single day, right? But also, you fear that joy means something bad is about to happen. And this isn't personality, by the way. You aren't a stoic if you're non-joyous, right? In fact, most stoics or most introverts are very joyful people. They're just selective about who they're joyous with and when they express it, right? But again, this isn't personality. When you feel all these things, it's trauma psychology, right? It's a byproduct of your maladaptive neurodevelopment between the ages of basically in utero to 12 years old, right? And so what happens is to enter the attic, to enter joy, to engage in your hobbies in a healthy way, you must retrain your nervous system to believe that joy is safe, joy is allowed, and joy is holy. It's divine. Right? That brings us to the spiritual side of joy. Scripture does not treat joy as a suggestion. As you know, we're a theistic company. I do believe in the God of the Bible, but I think the Bible is the greatest neurological, psychological, scientific piece of documentation for a life worth living ever drafted. Right? And so in Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse 10, it says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." So in psychological terms, what does that mean? Joy stabilizes you. It's that thing that you can hold on to. Because if it gives you strength, you're stable. You can endure anything. So being joyful actually makes you a warrior. Because that means nothing is going to faze you. If you have the capacity to allow joy of God to be your strength, sheesh, that's a force worth reckoning, right? Then in the Psalms, right, a lot of people know this one. It says, "In your presence is fullness of joy." So what does that mean also? Is that joy is evidence of God's nearness. And you might be saying to yourself, well, then God is a piece of crap because I had very little joy in my life. But here's the thing. I thought that for a very long time too. And I don't have all the answers. But I do know that once I surrendered myself to the capacity that joy was possible, I started to experience Him for myself. Okay? Then, in Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22, which Proverbs is probably one of the greatest psychology books in the Bible, also great on finances, business, amazing. But it says, "A cheerful heart is like a good medicine. So joy is biological healing. Actually takes you from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic, and it alkalines you. It's a biological effect on your body, because when you're joyous, your brain releases those happy chemicals, endorphins, dopamine, all of those things that work into making you a whole individual, things that you're required to not just survive, but to thrive with. So, biblically, joy isn't a reward of maturity, right? It's not this thing you get because you're doing the right thing. It's proof of it. It's the very proof that your life is on an upward trajectory, that you're going for something known as the greater good, which is the person that you were created to be. Because if every single person on earth was in the pursuit of being the best version of themselves, which is the person that they were created to be, guess what? It would be heaven on earth. Just think about that. So here's the thing. There is a role to these things. The role of hobbies, right? Hobbies are not childish. Hobbies are therapy for the adult nervous system. A hobby is something you do for no productivity, where you lose track of time, where you feel like yourself again, where you remember you're a person, not a machine. And what that does is that hobbies, they restore creativity, emotional regulation, curiosity, presence, energy, identity. Hobbies reintroduce the child you back into the adult you. So it's very important to understand the role of hobbies in your life. And like I said, that's why it's something that you intentionally schedule. It's not that your whole life is going to be a hobby, which, hey, maybe that is the point. Maybe we end up getting there someday, right? But it is definitely something that you intentionally pursue. And in fact, we believe that the attic is used as a diagnostic tool. Because here's the secret most people overlook. If you want to know whether someone is spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally healthy, look at their attic. Ask, do they play? Do they rest? Do they laugh easily? Do they have a hobby that feeds their soul? Do they know what brings them joy? If the attic is empty, the whole house is stained. And so, as always though, we have a way to build your attic. This is your call to action. So step 1 is permission. I want you to say out loud, joy is not a distraction. Joy is a duty. Your system needs to hear it. Right? Number 2, identify your joy pathways. Ask, what did I love as a kid? What activities make me lose track of time? Where do I feel alive? Your childhood tells the truth. Step 3, schedule joy. Like I said, intentional. This is a non-negotiable. 1 hour a week, minimum. Joy must be structured until it becomes natural. Now, if you're very busy, if you're an entrepreneur, if If you're the owner of a business, if you're a leader like myself, then you get joy from multiple sources in your life, not just your hobbies. But the point being is that it has to be scheduled, right? Step 4, protect it. Once you find it, don't ever let it go for anyone. Even my wife and I, the things that she loves doing, I would never ask her to stop doing those things. Just like the things that I love doing, she would never ask me to stop doing those things. And some of our hobbies, guess what? We do together. It's the things you love doing with the people you love doing them with, right? So never let guilt, productivity, or people invade your attic. This is a sacred space. Step 5, share it. Because joy becomes stronger when shared with someone safe. Even if those people in your life that are close to you that don't want to participate in the same activities that you do, tell them, this is what I love doing. Because when you share your joy with somebody else, it gives them the capacity to maybe think they can be joyous too. And overall, that just makes you a better person. So when you have someone who has the capacity to joy with a friend who doesn't have the capacity for joy, it makes it very difficult to maintain a healthy, thriving relationship. But when you have the capacity for joy and you're in a friendship or a brotherhood or a sisterhood with people who also have the capacity for joy, it compounds, it's infectious, it like spreads around, right? Then you get groups of happy people. Imagine a group of people happy all at the same time. Oh my God. The attic is where your healing comes out to play. Joy is the quiet strength that keeps purpose from becoming prison. Because remember again, you don't get your identity from what you do. You bring who you are into what you do. And most people get that wrong. Their purpose becomes their prison. But joy is the key to open that cell door. All right. So, we're going to recap. Joy isn't optional. Joy is proof your soul is healing. The attic of your life is where hobbies, play, and rest live. The things that make you human again. Because if you grew up in chaos, fun might feel dangerous. But joy is not a luxury. It's medicine. Protect it, schedule it, and practice it. Your calling needs a healthy attic, brick by brick. It's Thomas Emmanuel Arms O'Brien. I love you guys.